Hello, and welcome to another episode. Myself to Singularity. Let's play. This is Northstar. Hope you folks are well. Sorry, some pricks driving, tailgating, and making noxious amount of noise with revved up engines or speeding. Place I'm staying, you kind of need the airflow if having windows open, so. So, it's been a while. You folks are doing well. Second here. Sorry, closed one window because it is way too much traffic noise here. Oh, the perils of designing entire towns, communities around cars. Instead of mass transit, biking, walking. At least here and there, there is mass transit, but okay, good, it's recording. So things have been rough here. I mean, I'm sure you guys are used to my saying that by now, but especially rough since the last time I did one of these. With finally getting away from some of the abuse I think I talked about before I was facing, but after a really big fight where I was being threatened with violence if I lost my cool. And that's gonna come back to haunt me all sorts of ways, including family giving me shit about it. I'm sure. Extended family. Because honestly, they're a lot of them are the sort where, I mean, they can be decent people, but their understanding of the world skews heavily towards blaming the victims of things. If someone claims something happened to them, they tend not to believe it. Honestly, I was surprised some of them cared about Black Lives Matter. Although I think it was virtue signaling. I think they did because their friends were and they didn't want to be seen to not. I'm not sure they really cared, some of them. But maybe not give enough credit. What is for certain is they don't know the way it was being treated fully, and I doubt any of them ever want to hear it. I was dealing with a certain family member who had been too much trauma in their own life. And honestly just not emotionally equipped to deal with someone with long COVID staying with them. I mean, this kind of thing is unfortunately all too common. I was actually just speaking with someone on a dating app who developed basically ME/CFS after lupus many years back, and this person was saying that their mother, some toxic behaviors, and their ex-husband, because this person had been married, and when they became ill, eventually their husband left them and divorced them because they couldn't deal with the illness. You know, and that says something. People claim they'll be with someone through sickness and health, but then they leave when someone actually gets sick. There is a shallowness to our society. And it's not just marital relationships, it's family relationships, it's transactional. So you're gonna hate me saying this and think I'm being ridiculous, but it's ultimately the consequence of capitalism and how it affects the way we understand the world. Like I said, some of you are gonna hate me saying it. Call me whatever you will, just don't call me a liberal. I am I'm a democratic socialist. I'm sure many who've viewed my channel knows by now. And capitalism is a cancer that is destroying everything about our society bit by bit. But that's not all. The United States was, of course, a settler colony. It was founded in the genocide of the Native Americans, and that has had unique impacts on the culture that are still around to this day. People hate when you bring it up. They say, oh, you're being so woke, and like that's a bad thing. To be awake is what that means. To be aware of history, parts of history that may be uncomfortable. You know, you don't just genocide millions of natives and have your culture not be affected by generations hundreds of years later. These kind of things have lasting impact. It takes a very long time, many centuries to heal, essentially. There's a certain vindictiveness, chauvinism, and lack of empathy in cultures that were founded on wiping out previous cultures. And it's not just the United States. You can see this in, for instance, Australian culture, which committed genocide against the Aborigines, though not quite as many of them were around as the Native Americans in North America, and so it had less of an impact on their culture, but you see some of the same way it's messed with the culture there. Heck, it even took the Nordic cultures a while to deal with the partial genocide of the Sami peoples, because they're still around. But the natives of that area that were slowly wiped out in large parts of southern Sweden and Norway and Finland, but they're still around the northern parts. Because those areas were so cold, no one really wanted to live there. But, you know, natives are pushed to the most marginal, coldest land and greatly reduced numbers. And it wasn't until, like, the 1930s that the Nordic countries really started to come to terms with that past. Whereas the United States still maybe is not even where those Nordic countries were in the 30s. Still not there today. It's going to take a long time to leaving it to the same point. But yeah, the culture obviously affects how we treat, for instance, disabled people, how we treat the poor, how we treat ethnic minorities. These things are all directly related to our genocidal history as a culture. And I'm supposed to be able to say love it or leave it, but my ancestors have been here from the very beginning. But unfortunately, that means that, you know, they've been responsible for some of this stuff. Since we're talking like, what, 1600s? Some of the very earliest settlers. They almost certainly killed some natives in the Virginia Bay colony. Is it the Virginia Bay colony? Is that the right name for it? Not long ago, but I can't always remember. But, I don't believe in ancestral guilt. I believe things can contaminate culture, but it's not passed on through, you know, father to son or whatever. That's a load of crap when people say it is. Because I reject the things in our culture that are like that. Less guilty, although there was a period when I was, you know, you raise into a culture and you can't question it until you reach a certain age. So I was a kid, you know, not without being affected by all this. Anyways, I'm getting a huge tangent. I guess it's easier to talk about than to kind of peripherally let the things happen. But, yeah, no person who's disabled should have to deal with kind of things I went through. Family member was saying with constantly beating me down, trying to make me believe I was worthless. Always claiming I had it in for them, even though I had never done anything to hurt them, like believing I was conspiring against them, I mean. I'd never done any kind of conspiracy against this person. This family member also had a lot of paranoia because of people who had conspired against them in their past. But you have to be able to trust someone in the end. Anyways, some out of that abusive situation, but is that it won't be without many, many consequences. Probably few to none to the person who was behaving abusively to me, but I was powerless to do anything about that. If I'd done anything, I would have been kicked out. Well, now I'm not there anymore. Anyways, now I don't have the housing, and so I'm staying in some short-term apartment, trying to find a cheaper, longer-term place. But I'll need to. Any apartments that are cheaper, I have to have like 3 roommates already set up, and that's tough to do. You don't know people in the area. I mean, people move to this area sometimes like they're old college roommates, but I don't know. I think you can guess from my username that I'm in my 30s, and probably shouldn't have said that. If some people didn't catch that, now they know for sure, and there's always weird creepers online. But anyways, and having long COVID and having no source of income really, except it won't help in the government. It was very social isolated because it's not like I could afford to like go out to bars and meet people. Not to mention alcohol is not great for my condition, but even if I was willing to do it anyways, or just drink non-water or something, cost money to do that. I was lending my car to my mother all the time because she needed to get to work. That was paying the car insurance on it, and so, you know, it was costing me money. I wasn't having the benefit of actual transportation in a suburban area that, you know, leaves you isolated. Which, of course, probably contribute to the abuse situation when you're isolated and completely under one person's power. It's very easy for them to fall into bad behaviors that even they don't necessarily mean to do at first. Developed over time. Anyways, So I'm just working on the human body exploration event here anyways. Why can't I see my ranking? Well, there it is. It's not even showing because I'm so low, probably. Alright, there we go. Parietal lobe. Just wanted to grab this because it'll increase future simulation speeds. I doubt I'll get much further in this exploration. Give me 1 second. Sorry, for some weird reason a U-Haul pulled up. I'm like, what is it doing here? Short-term apartment is like someone gonna like suddenly move my stuff out on an expector or something, or someone else moving in. No, looks like the person was repacking stuff in their vehicle and then left. I must have been going somewhere and something fell loose in the back. I mean, that happens. 16 days since I've loaded this up. Yeah, I'll double the income. I don't do that often. The beyond exploration here, but probably worth it in this case. Large quasar groups. Yeah, the universe is an enormous place. Enormous. People think it's just our galaxy or something. No, because way beyond. There are other galaxies and entire superstructures of groups of galaxies and really weird galaxies like quasars, which is it's a type of galaxy. I mean, it's an unimaginably large structure. And we truly are just specks of dust. And yet, every person is important. Should be treated with love and respect. That is something I'll always hold to. To believing. It's not always the easiest. Especially when, say, someone's mistreating you or you've been raised to hate a certain group or whatever. I mean, I personally was not raised that way, but some people have been, so I'm trying to compass the variety of human experiences and what I'm saying. Especially because part of what I hope with this YouTube channel is to pull people to the left. Democratic socialism is to the left of social democracy, which is to the left of progressivism, which is to the left of liberalism, which don't ever call me a liberal. Really. Liberalism has just become a beard for capitalism. I was actually just reading an article, I think it was written in the Providence Daily Times or something, Providence something. It was explaining the history of the word liberalism in the United States, which first kind of was championed by FDR in 1932, supposedly, but that's not really accurate. He popularized the term, but honestly, it was still the most complete, accurate version of history I think I've seen, although it felt like everything I already knew. And when you read something like that, you gotta be very careful. Sometimes people are trying to propaganda as a certain sort of person who, by saying things that they would agree with so they can slip in things that they shouldn't. Someone who's knowledgeable about history. This was definitely something geared towards the politically educated and ruling class sort of people. This article, I think. Because ruling class people tend to have much more political education, and there's random people like me who just, it's passionate about politics, and I understand that it deeply, deeply impacts people's lives. Like, the fact that I had to live in an abusive situation and get out was partly because there's, state after state where there's, 9-year, 12-year, 16-year, 18-year waiting lists for Section 8 housing. Sometimes states create other programs, but they're often woefully underfunded and end up with just as long of a waiting list. So only people having a chance of getting in them when they need it are people who get in on those programs right when they're created. For the waiting lists get insanely long. But why? Why is funding so woefully inadequate? It's because of politics. It's because of the politics of favoring military spending over social programs and tax cuts for the rich. But technically, the government can run a huge deficit if it wants. It can cut taxes on the rich and spend on social programs. It'll drive a lot of inflation, but nobody stops the government from doing that except the political lashback against inflation. For those who aren't aware, and ironically, modern monetary theory nonsense has popularized this understanding of how money works. And they're right about some basic things. What modern monetary theory does is teaches people a lot of basic stuff that if they just read more economics, they would already know, and that slips in some stuff that's completely inaccurate. But the basic stuff is stuff most people have never been taught, so they understand, yes, the purpose of taxation is basically to prevent inflation, because you can run up a huge debt. Of course, debt is not meaningless because debt has interest, which is one of the things the MMT people conveniently leave out of their narratives. So if you get a large enough debt, you're paying huge percentages of your spending just to paying interest on debt. And that money isn't meaningless. It increases the relative amount of money that the rich who own the debt usually have versus everyone else, enabling them to outspend poor people on goods and services, and thus either drive inflation or obtain, if there's fierce competition for limited goods like housing, where you have rich people buying up housing through BlackRock now, Blackstone, whatever, these investment groups, these private equity firms are buying up all the housing in the United States. Well, not all, but a lot of it, enough of it to prevent housing prices from coming down at all, and to keep them going up at a sharp rate. They don't have to actually buy up that much, but if they buy up a tiny percent of the housing every year, an ever larger share of housing they will own, and they will keep housing prices from ever falling, and that's what they're doing. These same groups are also buying up hospitals and shutting them down just to drive up the profitability of healthcare, because they own certain hospitals that are highly profitable, and then they'll buy up community hospitals and shut them down, not actually intending to run them, even though they're technically profitable. But as much as those community hospitals are profitable, they cut into the profits of the highly profitable major urban hospitals. just by existing more. So, they gain more profit by owning an urban hospital. It's the only game in town. Monopolistic, pricing than when there's a community hospital and the urban hospital. Both existing. And to see full utilization both, they have to either set the prices or if they own both, or there's competition if different entities own both. Yeah, to understand why capitalism is busted, you have to understand a lot how capitalism works to really prove it to people. So, yeah, I've gone into the nitty-gritty of capitalism quite often in this channel and stuff, and I'm sure the government would like to target me. There's nothing they would like more than to, lock me away and silence me. If I misstep and screw up in any way, then they will take advantage of that to do so. Because, we're getting to a very dystopian point of society. The justice system isn't really fair or just anymore. The police are increasingly fascist. The judges who were fair-minded and honest have been replaced by corrupt and highly hyper-conservative judges. You get the idea. Prosecutors make their careers off putting people behind bars as long as possible, even for minor offenses. The whole system is messed up. Some people are thinking being ridiculous, but really, there's a lot of money to be made with the prison industrial complex in certain states, and even in other places. Prosecutors can make a name off of doing lots of harsh sentences. Even people who don't deserve the harsh sentences, and then they can go and run for office, political office later. Because the news media stokes up fear over crime, even though crime is lower than it's ever been, especially violent crime in the United States. It start fear over violent crime. This allows prosecutors to profit off this. That's what Kamala Harris did. She was an evil piece of work. She threw away as many people behind bars for as long as possible in California, made a career off it, and then entered politics. Did not like her one bit. Obviously, she was better than Trump. I also did not live in a swing state, so I did not vote for her because I did not need to. Because again, I do not live in a swing state, and the Electoral College means only swing states. Does your vote count? In non-swing states, you can vote for anyone, and it won't matter, usually, because there's so many people who are just going to vote for a given party. So I voted third party because, again, I don't live in a swing state. Now, down ticket, I voted Democrat because those seats are not secure a lot of the time, and they were in my area. Not beyond a doubt secure. But top of the ticket, Claudia de la Cruz, because, I think it's important to, people voting for a woman, and Claudia de la Cruz is a socialist. So it's a big middle finger to the capitalist status quo. Again, I don't live in a state where she was ever going to win, or a state where the Democrats, as it happens, were ever going to lose no matter who I voted for. So I live in a blue state. I don't think that is a mystery at this point. So, I voted for Claudia de la Cruz because screw Harris and screw her support for genocide and screw her putting people behind bars for excessive periods of time to build her political career when she was much younger back in California. Anyways, enough of this video. Been going too long, and I probably upset some people. I apologize. I'm not trying to offend you. I'm trying to open your mind and teach and challenge your beliefs, viewers, for those who aren't already in alignment with me politically. Ask questions, challenge me. I respond to comments, but keep an open mind, because I will say things that might actually open your eyes in the replies. Anyways, I wish you all the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves, and may you always find a guiding star to lead you home. Adieu. Until next time.